If you've been playing Roblox for a while, you've almost certainly heard or even played the game known as Flood Escape. All you do in this game is traverse through 3 rooms and press buttons that help you escape the deadly flood. And as basic as that sounds, this game is pretty iconic. It's a simple concept that has racked up hundreds of millions of players, but this game no longer gets thousands of current players, and that's probably because of the sequel, Flood Escape 2. This game is simply a more polished version of the original. Instead of each map having 3 rooms, each map, which are basically levels, is as immersive and large as the creator wants. The graphics also looked a lot better, and it was also a lot trickier. This game also featured an extra difficulty named Insane, and it was overall a great successor to the original Flood Escape. However, something has changed as of the past year or so. This game went from consistently getting well over thousands of active players to rarely being able to surpass 800, and it feels like it's getting worse and worse as we speak. So today, I'm going to be diving in deep. I'm going to talk about basically everything about this game, every single update release, why it's dying, and I also want to talk about another Flood Escape game that I feel like will not perform very well. So without further ado, let's get into this very short video. Flood Escape Classic released on August 15th, 2010, and it was pretty popular. It was a very simple but cool concept for a game, and it led to a lot of people making videos about the game, a lot of people playing the game, and a lot of people simply praising it for how unique it was. Keep in mind, Roblox obbies were not very good before this game released. The most you had was Mega Fun Obby, which is somehow still getting updated to this day, and a bunch of kinda crappy games. So while Flood Escape Classic doesn't seem that impressive nowadays, it was the king of Roblox obbies back in 2010. It was the first game the creator, whose username is CrazyBox, made that did really well, and I can only imagine how happy it was when he saw the success of this game. But little did everyone know, CrazyBox was cooking something behind the scenes, and not a single person knew about it besides himself. No, he was actually really public about this game, and basically everyone knew about it, and this game would be known as Catch That Man! I mean, this game is simply incredible. Of course CrazyBox is telling everyone about it. How could he not spill the beans on this perfect masterpiece? 10 out of 10 game, video over. Oh, and he also made this other smaller project called Flood Escape 2. Now before I dive in, I just want to make one thing very clear. Flood Escape 2 is not just a solid sequel to a game that only exists to make the prequel get even more attention. In fact, Flood Escape 2 is nowhere near your average Roblox game. It's created by an incredibly talented game designer who genuinely wants to grant people an extremely entertaining and fun experience. This game has a whole community, including a Discord server and its own wiki. There's hundreds of maps to play in the game and thousands of maps to play from the community. There's unique soundtracks, incredible talent, and so much more. Flood Escape 2 isn't just another Roblox game, and I spent literal years of my life playing it and getting to know incredible people from it. In fact, I've actually made friends because of this game. However, everything feels like it's coming to a close. Everything that made people want to come in and stick around is slowly but surely fading away. The player count is ascending, the community is getting worse, and it feels like the game is at its lowest point it has ever been since it released years ago. But where did it all go wrong? How did this game go from this player count being normal to this being above average? And most importantly, can it be saved? Well, to figure this all out, we have to go back a bit. In fact, we're going all the way back 9 years ago to 2016, where the game first came to be. This is the full history of the incredible Roblox game that's known as Flood Escape 2. Throughout summer 2016, CrazyBox was teasing on his X account on how the game was going. He officially announced that this would indeed be a Flood Escape sequel, but I unfortunately can't show these posts because every time I click on a link, it gives me this error. I was able to find his older messages on Discord though, and they just give everyone updates on how the game is going. And on an unknown day during March of 2017, Flood Escape 2 was released in pre-alpha. The game only had 4 different maps. Those were Lost Woods, Infiltration, Lava Tower, and Abandoned Facility. However, a new map was added only a week or 2 later titled Crystal Caverns. In case I haven't made it already abundantly obvious, I hate this map. It's just so boring and it's very difficult to sight read, but it's historical, I guess. Familiar Runes was also shown up on Twitter, but we can't show it for obvious reasons. Then on April 16th, 2017, the game was released in alpha for group members. It was only a few weeks later until another new map was added. This map was called Cave System, and even though I also dislike this map, it's nowhere near as bad as some other maps I dare not mention. Flood Island was also added, which is a much better map, and it's also very iconic, but it's overall pretty short and nothing to write home about. Abandoned Facility was then revamped from this to this. Personally, I think it's much better, but it's definitely not the last time this map will get revamped. After that, we got another new map. This time it was Sinking Ship, arguably one of the most recognizable maps in the whole game. I mean, people who don't even play Flood Escape 2 might have probably heard about this map. Not to mention, the song is an absolute bop. Why is Darman in my recommended? By the way, I'm going to be calling songs OSTs from now on, so don't get confused if I say OST again. After that, we got 2 new maps just completely out of the blue. These were called Castle Tides and Lost Desert. Sorry, I'm drinking a Baja Blast right now. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why is the game getting so many new maps? I mean, we haven't even entered 2018 yet, and we already have around 10 of them. Well, I personally think all these maps are added because the game was just released and was doing pretty well with the members. So Crazy Block just wanted to keep that hype before the actual public got to play it, and just added update after update after update. After those 2 maps, we got Snowy Peaks and Dark Side Forest, both hard maps. These maps aren't exactly the best, but the game had just been released and the bar was set pretty low. But yeah, these maps didn't exactly age well. But then on September 10th, 2017, the game finally released to everyone in the public for beta. Before this, everyone who played the game were group members, but now everyone and their mom could play it, and they were having a grand time. 3 days later, an Insane Lock feature was added. This basically allowed you to pay 10 gems and have the next 3 rounds forced to be the insane difficulty, which was the hardest difficulty at the time. It's no longer with us, but we'll get into that a bit later. One day after the Insane Lock was added, we got another new map called Autumn Hideaway, and let's just hope the creator does nothing wrong that warrants this map getting removed forever. That would be terrible. Decrepit Seas was also added a few days after, and it was made by the same guy who made Lost Desert. Yeah, he actually made quite a few maps. Then a new feature was added known as wall jumping, and here's how it works. Basically, you go on the wall with these funny arrows, and then you jump. This will cause you to fly off in a very stylish way, and it can allow you to jump to other platforms or other wall jumps. Currently, it's only in the lobby, and I'm not sure if it'll ever be added to an actual map. Oh look, it's Halloween and we have a new map that has these wall jumps. While Graveyard Cliffside isn't the best map, it certainly does use the wall jumps to its advantage. Another new map that uses wall jumps is Dark Side Facility, which was easily the new hardest map, and it would remain the hardest map for a good while. It's pretty safe to say that this map is very well known when it comes to Floodscape 2. New OSTs were also added for Lost Desert and Abandoned Facilities, so now they don't have to use those random songs that Crazy Block didn't even make. Like, Crystal Cavern's original music was a Harry Potter song. That's like the most random thing he could do. December gave us 2 maps. These were Wild Savannah and Northern Workshop. Northern Workshop is actually a seasonal map, and it was quickly removed after the Christmas season. But that's the end of the 2017 season for Floodscape 2. Overall, it was a great start for the game. People were playing it, YouTubers were making videos about the game, and it was only getting better and better. But the game was just getting started. So let's move on to 2018 and see how it improved. 2018 was the first year where I actually started to play the game. I'm not exactly sure when I first played it, but I know it was sometime in the summer. Almost immediately after the new year started, a new normal map called Forgotten Tombs was added. However, it wasn't just like any other ordinary map. It was added for an event that was known as a Labyrinth event. This map would feature a short secret room that contained what was known as a hidden treasure. This was just a really big golden E that played this after you obtained it.
Congratulations, you won!
The players that succeeded in getting the hidden treasure were rewarded for completing the extremely tough and gruesome task of taking 20 seconds out of your day to go to the secret room. What was the reward? The Minotaur Mask. You obviously can't obtain it as of right now, but if I did have it, you bet I'd be flexing on everyone else who didn't take the time to obtain it. The map was removed on January 30th, 2018, and gee, I don't think it'll ever be returning to the game. Then out of nowhere, we got 6 new OSTs for the maps that were using random songs. We also got a new normal map conveniently on the same day Forgotten Tombs was removed called Mysterium, and this is still one of my personal favorites to this day. I love the cramped feeling of the map, and the OST is pretty awesome as well. Abandoned Facility was then buffed, but thankfully we have a video that shows someone beating it before it got buffed. And I just want to say that this guy did so many things wrong. He didn't use the skip, he randomly stopped at this part here, and he didn't hop up the ladder. This is probably the hardest map you've done. Let me look at your other videos. Oh. Oh! Oh! You know what? Take back everything I said. This guy's literally beating maps that I haven't even gotten close to beating. So you know what? Good job. The only issue that I have is that you haven't posted in a while, but to be honest, I can't really be the judge of that. Anyways, we then got a new insane map, and I had people thinking that it could maybe dethrone the current hardest map, Darkside Facility. This map is called Beneath the Ruins, and to be honest, I see why people think this is harder than Darkside Facility. It isn't as fast-paced, but it's longer, more confusing, and has a couple sections that are overall trickier. Personally, I think this map is just a bit easier, but I don't blame anyone who says otherwise. VIP was also added, and it was honestly pretty OP when it first arrived. Obviously, 1200 Robux is a little absurd, but you got so many gems that it was honestly worth it if you were a hardcore player. The next major update was actually a few months later. The updates in between this one were pretty minor, and it took us a while before we got an actual major one. This update gave us the map known as Sedimentary Temple, and it was made by We also got a few new auras, but other than those two things, this update wasn't anything too crazy. Hey, do you remember Graveyard's Cliffside? Well, that map got a revamp and a brand new OST. It's honestly pretty impressive how this map managed to go so long without having an OST, but it got one, and it got a pretty good one too. Just listen to this. The lobby was also given this cool Halloween makeover, but it wouldn't be there for long because you want to know what comes right after October? December. Okay, so I'm writing the script for this video as of right now, and I completely forgot about November. I don't know why I said December comes after October, especially considering how I'm writing this in November right now, but I guess I just thought that it would be a cool transition for some reason. Sorry for being so utterly stupid, but back to the video. This meant that the Halloween lobby would move out and the Christmas lobby would come in. The lobby also got a new Christmas OST, and I personally think it sounds great, but why didn't the Halloween lobby get its own OST? It's like they don't even care about this lobby. Anyways, along with the Christmas lobby, we got two new maps, which are both normal difficulty. We saw the epic return of Northern Workshop, which actually got a full revamp with a new OST, and the other new map was... wait, what? Why is Forgotten Tombs back? And why did Crazy Block decide to bring it back during Christmas of all times? If you ask me, or anyone else in the whole world, they will tell you that Forgotten Tombs is not a Christmas map, and this map isn't even that good to begin with. If anything, it's a bad map. It probably only returned because Crazy Blocks made it. Sorry. And that's all for 2018. Overall, this might have been an even better year than 2017. I personally have a lot of fun memories of playing the game during this year, and I remember the game being really fun and simple. Anyways, let's move on to the next year, 2019. 2019 was a pretty big year for this game. However, it started off not so great. During the beginning of January, Autumn Hideaway was removed out of the blue. I actually remember when I played this game after this change and I found myself saying, it feels like there's something missing. But that's because there was something missing. It was Autumn Hideaway. Now, why would a seemingly innocent map be removed without warning? Maybe the creator wanted it to be removed? Maybe there was a glitch and they couldn't get the map back? Or maybe it was removed by accident and the creator didn't care that it was gone. There's gotta be some reason. Wait. No! That's right. On January 5th, 2019, not even a week into the new year, Autumn Hideaway was taken out. And you want to know the reason? It's because the creator, Nene, harassed a young user on Discord. Not only was this map removed, but all of Nene's other maps and map tests were taken out as well. By the way, I actually haven't mentioned map tests yet, so here's what that is. It's basically a separate game where you can play, or more appropriately, test the maps that you've made in Roblox Studio, and also the maps that other people have made. It's a great way to play unfinished maps you're making, or play other maps that aren't in the official game. Nowadays it's referred to as Flowscape 2 community maps, but it's still called map tests in my heart. Speaking of map tests, there was a pretty big change in that game. There was this new mysterious difficulty that no one had ever heard of before, and it's called Crazy. Wait, what? Crazy Blocks, you had so many different ways to make the name of this difficulty sound cool and interesting. But crazy? That's literally a synonym for the previous hardest difficulty, insane. You could have named it one of the remaining 170,000 words from the Oxford English Dictionary, but no, you called it crazy. But it's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, if we get a new difficulty after this one, I'm sure it'll have a much more creative name than Crazy. Right? Anyways, this new difficulty was only a map test, and it really didn't serve much of a purpose other than being an even harder insane. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this will become irrelevant in the future. 1 month later, we got a new skin. Yeah, there's skins in this game for some reason, and not a single person uses them. This skin was called Bloxy, and I'm only mentioning it because it was added due to the game winning the Xbox Game of the Year. And while Flowscape 2 is a good game, Xbox Game of the Year is kind of pushing it, don't you think? You could only get this skin by entering a limited time code at the shop, but if you try it now, the game is just like, no, stop, we never had that code, stop trying it. The Lock to Insane feature was also updated a little bit. Instead of being forced to pay up with 10 gems, you can now use 200 coins to get the job done as well. Coins are a lot more common than gems, so it makes sense why Crazy Blocks decided to add this alternative to locking the lift. During April, Crazy Blocks decided to do something a little bit random. He simply made the pre-alpha version of the game public, which, I mean, sure. If you search it up on Roblox, you don't even get anything. But it's nice how he made it public so the people who didn't get a chance to play could see how far this game has come. Or alternatively, the people who played it years ago could come back for some nostalgia. Anyways, we then got an update that introduced gifting. Basically, if you pay a certain amount of Robux, you can get coins or gems, but then the rest of the server will be gifted some of your currency for free. There's also the feature that causes people in the chat to act like someone just gifted everyone winning lottery tickets. Like, it's just a few gems, relax. We also got a brand new pro server lobby. If you don't know, pro servers are separate servers that only people over level 50 can join. This reassures that you're playing with the best of the best. unless there's hackers, which there tend to be hackers in Floodescape too. The requirements for pro servers change all the time, so if you can't join them now, just wait a few months and then you can probably enter then. Okay, quick update, the requirements changed again, and now you don't have to be level 50, you have to be at least level 20, but I mean, that kind of proves my point. I mean, the requirements change all the time. And I think it's important to mention that we got an update on my birthday! And it was a very major update as well, because it changed the lighting type from legacy to compatibility. Gee, thanks for the birthday present, Crazy Box. What's next? A new plant in the lobby? Now you might want to sit down for this next update, because in July we got what might be the most major update in the game's history. What's this elusive update I'm for some reason not telling you about? It's the fact that the event script and the local event script were enabled in map test. Oh yeah, and now, do you remember when I talked about that new difficulty named Crazy? Well, I thought it was pretty weird that it was only in map test, but that got me thinking. Was CrazyBlock just testing out this new difficulty in map test to see if it worked? Or was he actually planning to add it in the main game? Yes! That's right, both of these things are true, and now that same difficulty that I made fun of for having a generic name has been added to the actual main game. Our first crazy map that we got was known as Blue Moon, and this continues to be a face of the game to this day. It was also the first time in a while where everyone in the community collectively agreed that there was a new hardest map. Darkside Facility had finally been dethroned. It only took 607 days. Another thing this update introduced was the Pro Lock, and it took place of the beloved Insane Lock. So what did it do differently? Nothing! They literally just renamed it to Pro Lock and didn't change anything. Now this might have been because Crazy was added, so they might have changed something to make it work with Crazy, but still, why would you rebrand the iconic Insane Lock? There's no reason to do that. Anyways, this update really got people playing the game. Everyone was desperate to beat Blue Moon, and even the people who didn't have a chance were trying to do it, and eventually we got our victors. Nowadays, Blue Moon is seen as a nostalgic, yet relatively easy crazy map that most players have permanently etched into their brain. Now, you'd think Crazy Blocks would take advantage of this, but throughout the rest of the year, we got no more new maps. We got minor things like button locators, chaos servers, and private server commands, but that was about it. We did get group buttons though, which are basically just buttons that multiple people need to press in order for them to work. However, we didn't get a single new map for the rest of the year. I'm not sure why Crazy Blocks decided to go on this long hiatus for adding maps, but he could have easily kept the popularity for this game going if he did add some more. But hey, I'm not a game developer, and if I was making this game, I would have no idea what the heck I was doing. So maybe this temporary break was for the better. I mean, at least we got Northern Workshop back, but that's kind of becoming an annual thing, so it's not that special. Overall, 2019 was a pretty good year. We only got one new map, but it was a pretty major one. We also got a whole new difficulty and a lot of other stuff. Hopefully 2020 will be a great year, not just for the game, but for the whole world. Yeah, I'm having another Baja Blast, sorry. They're just so good. So the world kind of shut down during the duration of this year, but because everyone is stuck at home with nothing to do, the game must be getting a lot of updates, right? Right? We got a total of 12 updates throughout the entirety of this year. Now, I know 12 updates does sound like a lot on paper, like that's an update every month, until you look at the update log and realize that the first update of this year was in June? We spent half of the year rotting away in our house and we didn't even get a single update. And this new update wasn't even that good to begin with. It just gave us a new lift and introduced boomboxes, which I'm pretty sure are muted by default. So yeah, in the beginning, people thought this year wouldn't be anything interesting or special. But when I looked into the update log, I found out that not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 new maps released during this year. Compared to 2019, this is huge, and I'm going to be talking about all of them. The first one came out in November, so everyone was probably doubting we were going to get a new map considering how close to the end of the year we were. This map was called Mara Dreams, and it's incredible! I definitely did call it my second least favorite map on my top 10 least favorite maps video. Yeah, this map kind of sucks. We waited over a year for a new map, and this is what we got? Not only is it way too hard for an easy map, but it's also super lame. Like, what's the theme? Where are we? What are we? It's also super boring. Like, the second half of this map is literally just walking on bridges to get to buttons that activate other bridges. So yeah, this map was not exactly the best of returns. But don't worry, because the next map was also pretty terrible. This one was called Fallen, whatever that means, and it looks super cool on the surface. Like, the grayscale effect, the fog everywhere, the floating crystals, and the fact that the platforms literally fade away. But then you play the map, and yeah, I don't think I need to tell you why this map is commonly considered to be one of the worst maps of all time. It's just the same, like, 5 or 6 platforms copied and pasted over and over again at different angles? Who made this map, and why did Crazy Box accept it? Oh. Yeah, this map was probably only added because the owner of the game, Crazybox, made it. And I can guarantee that if anyone else made this map, it would get rejected instantaneously. Thankfully, the next map is actually good. This is Sunken Citadel, and what's crazy is that you can vote for this map, along with all the other maps in the game. That's right, a voting system was added. It basically just allows the server to vote for which map they want to play next. It's nothing too outstanding, but it's nice that we can now choose what map we want to play instead of having the game randomly choose for us. The voting system itself has been tweaked a couple of times over the years, but thankfully we still have it. Unlike the title screen. Anyway, Sunken Citadel obviously takes place underwater, and it's pretty fun. It received a revamp a little bit after it was released, but the old version wasn't bad either. I also really like the OST, and overall, this map is a blast to play. Unfortunately, the lock to insane feature, the pro lock, was removed around this time in favor of the intensity system, which is just nowhere near as good. Basically, each difficulty has its own number. Easy is 1, normal is 2, hard is 3, insane is 4, and yeah, you get the point. If you boost the intensity with gems, it increases the number by 0.5, and the intensity increases if more people survive, kind of like the old system. If you like this system more, you're just wrong. I mean, it's not bad, but it could be better. Literally 2 days after Sunken Citadel was added, we got another new map. This is Construction Thrill, and it's easily one of the best maps in the game to this day. The OST is fantastic, it has good design that still holds up many years later, and it has some of the most fun gameplay I've seen in a while. When I think of a good Floodscape 2 map, this one comes to mind. However, not that many people talked about this map, and that's probably because the next map added was another crazy map. This is Poisonous Chasm, aka the map that no one votes for nowadays for some reason, but I don't get why people carelessly brush away this map. It is genuinely so fun. I love the OST, the design still holds up, and the gameplay is super fast paced and enjoyable. I remember people were originally debating whether or not this map was harder than Blue Moon. I think the general consensus was that Blue Moon was still the king, but this map got the silver medal. Once you beat this map a few times, it became burned into your brain, and you can probably beat it with your eyes closed. But there's still one more map that was released this year. Ironically, we went from a new crazy map straight to a new easy map, and what we got was Buried Oasis. And this is not a map to be overlooked. It's just an easy map, but it's actually pretty fun, unlike most easy maps. I also adore the OST, and the design is pretty good too. And those are all the 2020 maps. It's kind of crazy how we spent 10 months of the year with no new maps, and then just randomly got 6 new ones at the very end as if Crazybox forgot to add them. Overall, 2020 was a pretty good year for Floodscape 2. However, I don't just want to talk about the new maps. So here are a few things that got added this year that I want to talk about. The lobby's OST got changed a little bit to sound a bit more fresh. Here's the old one. And here's the new one. You'd think people would be mad about us losing the iconic lobby OST, but people were actually okay with the changes. Some people even said that they liked it more than the original. The lift, which is the place you go to play the maps, got a huge redesign. The design used to look like this, but it wasn't really anything special. But now it takes you to this dark and ominous room, and it even got its own OST. And it sounds pretty good too, just listen to it. Finally, the game got a new title screen, and even though this looks like it was added just for aesthetics, it actually had a few purposes. With this title screen, you could view the game's social media, join your friends, and more. Wow, this title screen is such a cool and nifty feature. Let's hope that it stays with us forever and ever and doesn't get unnecessarily removed. While 2020 was another good year for the game, I don't think it's able to surpass 2019 due to the lack of updates until the end. Plus, 2019 got a whole new difficulty, and 2020 just got a few new maps. But I don't think 2020 was a terrible year for Floodscape 2 either, and the game was still regularly getting over 1,000 active players. Now, let's move on to the next year, 2021. In 2021, nothing really happened in January. It wasn't until the 10th of February where we got our next new map named Magmatic Mines, and this map is absolutely amazing. Basically, just take everything good I said about the previous maps and combine it into this map. I do think people were speculating that this map would be added months before the game was even updated, but we got our wish in the form of a very good map. Just don't play this map with an FPS over 120 because then the map looks like this.
What? What is that like? Bro, that's like freaking almost 90 degrees.
We also got the brand new rescue mission event. If you don't know what that is, let me break it down for you. Basically, every so often, a map will load and there will be a rescue mission. This means that there will be an NPC in a hard to get place, and if you rescue them and complete the map, you get 2 whole gems. I really like this event because it's a perfect way to add an optional challenge. I also like how you have to actually beat the map after you rescue them instead of just getting the reward right then and there. And clearly people like this event because it's still here to this day, along with a lot of other events which we'll talk about later. A month later, we were met with part 1 of the new agility update. This update introduced sliding, which allows you to, slide, and it also added ziplines, which are pretty self-explanatory. They can quickly transport you to different areas. This update also led to 19 maps being updated. That sounds kinda insane, but it was all done to implement these new agility features into the actual maps. For example, Fallen got this obnoxiously long zipline, Sunken Citadel got this slide barrier, and the beginning of Wild Savannah was totally redone to incorporate this zipline. However, I still take the old route. So yeah, none of the maps were updated in a major way, they were just slightly changed for the new sliding and the new ziplines. Even though this was a seemingly perfect update that added more cool features, the agility update was changed not even a week after release. But it wasn't anything major, there were just some bug fixes and the keybinds were changed. During April, there was another Roblox event called the Metaverse Champions. Floodescape 2 was a part of this event, and the game was updated to include these things called lost pages. Basically, some maps had these pages that were hidden away, usually in a corner or a hidden room. If you find the page, you're rewarded with 50 whole XP. What I like about the lost pages is that they don't disappear forever after you collect them for the first time, so you get to go back and get them again. The lost page map event is also still with us today, but I kind of see it as a worse version of the rescue mission. After the Metaverse Champions event, we got a new map called Forsaken Era, and while I do love to see an actual good easy map after Mar Dreams, Magmatic Mines is just infinitely better. Then we got a Spanish translation for Floodescape 2, so instead of playing Floodescape 2, you could be playing Escape de Inundaciones 2. Anyways, we then got a new map event known as All Group Buttons. As expected, it turns every button into a group button so more people need to get it. So this is basically just Chaos servers but with less people. By the way, Chaos servers are separate servers where up to 50 people can join and every button is a group button. These servers tend to get pretty hectic and they're honestly a lot of fun. This event was recently replaced with a random group buttons event and I don't really know why they changed it, but who cares. Blue Moon got a slight revamp and now you can rebirth up to 15 times because yes, you can rebirth in this game for no other reason than to flex the fact that you should probably take a break and go outside. Poisonous Chasm also got a slight revamp and it overall seemed like maps were just getting smaller updates to improve things that were already good about them. All the recent updates have seemed to be pretty minor, but during July we had a new difficulty in map test. Hopefully it has a cool and creative name. In fact, let's brainstorm some ideas for the name. It could be called Hellish, it could be called Grueling, and it could be called so much more. Let's see what Crazy Block's called. No. Yep, Crazy Blox really decided to name the new difficulty Crazy Plus. Like, was he even trying to make this creative in any way, shape, or form? This is just straight up disrespectful at this point. Like, I know no one else cares about the difficulty names besides me, but come on. Oh, and we can't forget about this image from Discord. I'm not even gonna bother reading it, just look at these difficulty names. They all have an extra plus at the end besides the last one, which is called Infinite for no reason other than the fact that it sounds cool or whatever. Thankfully, none of these have actually been implemented into the main game or map test, and it's probably just a moderator trolling with us. Okay, another quick update. Apparently these actually were added in map tests, so it was not just someone trolling with us. These difficulties are for realsies, but they're still not in the main game, just in map tests, so you can use them if you want for some reason. Anyways, Crazy Plus was only in map tests at this point, but in October the main game was updated again, and no, it did not get Crazy Plus. Instead, we got 2 new maps and a revamp of Darkside Forest. The 2 new maps were Relic Valley and Fall Equinox, and I personally like the latter more than Relic Valley, but that's just me. The revamp for Darkside Forest was alright. On the bright side, it was prettier, but the gameplay didn't change other than this one extra button that's essentially useless. It also got a new OST, and I'm personally not the biggest fan. It's just the same 4 notes over and over again with drums and rain in the background, but it could be worse, I guess. For Halloween, we got a new map. What's interesting about this though is that it's another seasonal map like Northern Workshop. This means that it'll be added for a short period of time every year. In this case, it's being added every Halloween. This is Eerie Peaks, a relatively short, easy map that has a fun OST. But I just have one small question. Why was this added during November and not October? Like, you had one job and you somehow screwed it up. This isn't even a job, this is a minor task. It's an unconventional workaround at best. Thankfully, Crazy Blox added Northern Workshop on time, and we also got a new seasonal Christmas map named Polar Industry. It's another short and charming easy map that was taken away and saved for next year. We also got Poisonous Forest, a hard map that's actually one of my favorites. It's pretty long, the design looks great, it plays out in a fun way, and the OST is great, but after that, not much else was added. So overall, 2021 was another good year for the game. The game is still getting over 1,000 active players on bad days, and the community is going well too. Now, let's head into 2022, and we'll see if anything major changes. 2022 was not exactly that major for Floodescape 2 in the beginning. We didn't get a single new map for months. However, we did get daily challenges, which are pretty self-explanatory. Basically, you get a few different optional tasks every day, and each one gives you a few gems when you complete it. I actually really like this system, but I don't like how some of the challenges are locked behind Roblox Premium. We also got 10 new skins, and each of them were themed to a specific map, which is kind of fun. A couple of days after the skins were added, we saw the removal of the Boombox Game Pass. This is probably due to the worst update in Roblox history rolling out around that time, which basically deleted all of the uploaded audios. So the boombox was essentially useless now, but no one really liked it to begin with, so I can't imagine people were disappointed with this change. On April Fool's Day, we got a new server type called chill servers. It's essentially the opposite of pro servers, and the intensity is maxed out at 3. It was recommended for new players as soon as they joined for the first time, and it was an overall great way to get people introduced to the game. Fallen was also completely revamped. It went from this to this! I think it's pretty safe to say that this is an incredible improvement, but why did CrazyBlox make it an insane map instead of a hard map like the original was? During October, CrazyBlox probably realized that he was slacking when it came to adding new maps, so he just randomly added 3 new maps out of the blue, and 2 of those were brand new crazy maps. The other map that we got was an insane map called Satomi Springs, and the crazy maps were called Sandswept Ruins and Ignis Peaks. Sandswept Ruins was especially infamous because it finally dethroned Blue Moon and was the new hardest map. It's pretty safe to say that this update was relatively unexpected, and these 3 maps were actually fun and entertaining. I particularly like Ignis Peaks because it's just so much fun, but the other 2 maps were great as well. When December came around, we got our 2 Christmas maps back, along with another new map. What's this map exactly? Fallen Classic. CrazyBlox, why did you bring this map back? I don't think a single person enjoys playing this map, and it's not like the community requested to bring it back or whatever. Oh. Yeah, I have no idea why the community was so desperate to see this excuse of a map return, and it still confuses me to this day. Like, this is a map that was famously hated by the community, and when it's removed, everyone gets on their hands and knees and begs CrazyBlox to bring it back. Okay, well, let's look on the bright side. If people requested to have this map returned, then it must get loads and loads of votes, right? Right? That's right, this map got absolutely no votes when it finally came back. Like, why did you ask to get it back? You're not even voting for it. Did you want it back just so you can trash on it more? Because it definitely seems like that's the case. By the way, pro servers now require you to be 7 years old and above. This means that 90% of the community unfortunately cannot join pro servers. What a shame. Anyways, yet another event was added to the game in the form of the fog event. As you can expect, it's just added fog to the map and it made it much more difficult to see. I do believe that the fog density was changed in a later update to make this event a little bit easier, but don't fact check me on that. Wait a second, why do the daily challenges list the fog event as the heavy fog event? That makes it sound like a completely different version of the fog event that we all know and love. Seriously, you had one job. Another event was added known as the Exploding Buttons event. As you can expect, it made the buttons explode when you press them. I actually like this event more than a lot of other people, but sometimes the buttons are in really cramped areas and it basically forces you to explode. But that's all for 2022. It was definitely less eventful than the previous years, besides the new crazy maps, but the game is still getting a decent amount of players. Well, kinda. If you look at this super cool and analytical graph that I found, you'll notice that the game regularly dipped under the expected 1,000 current players. We were now getting an average of 900 players and even 800. This did randomly change near the end of the year, but the game's gonna have to go through some major updates in 2023 if CrazyBlox wants to keep people playing. When 2023 started, the game was starting to kind of get its players back, and it's probably because right when the year started, we were met with 2 new maps. These maps were called Toxic Woods and Northern World, and they were actually just reskins of 2 other maps that people have come to know and love. I think people commonly forget these maps exist, and it's probably because we got a very major update not even a month later. This update gave us 3 new maps, but not in the way that you'd expect. These maps are all crazy maps, so people were getting excited to try them out and beat them all. These maps are called Active Volcanic Mines, Desert Ruins, and Mars Station. However, these weren't just added and then kept forever. These maps are called highlighted maps. Basically, every month from now on, we would get a few new maps, but they would be swapped out for new highlights at the start of the next month. If you're confused, don't worry, because I was as well when this system first came out. Some highlighted maps will actually go on to become permanent due to... Actually, I don't know why some highlighted maps were made permanent. But out of the 3 maps for this month, we managed to get one of them permanent, which was Active Volcanic Mines. This map absolutely destroyed Sandswept Ruins for the place of the hardest map, and this map is still one of the most well-received maps that has ever been added. Overall, this highlight system is pretty cool. How many more maps will we bring to be highlighted? Yeah, they're still highlighting maps to this day. No joke, every single one of those images is a different map. And if you want to know how many maps are in this image, I don't know, count it yourself. Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that I will not be mentioning all these monthly highlights. There's just too many, and there's more being added every month. Okay, just a little quick update. They changed the highlight system, and now there's highlights being added every 2 months, so not 1 month. But I mean, that's still a lot of maps. Anyways, Sandswept Ruins finally got its own OST, map events got new sound effects, and a bunch of other minor things happened in March. In April though, things got interesting. You see, most established Roblox games have badges. Basically, you can get these badges by accomplishing certain things in the game. Floodescape 2 had badges, but they weren't that many because the badges were just for completing insane and crazy maps. But in April, we got 63 new badges! This included every single permanent map getting a badge, every single highlight getting a badge, and some other miscellaneous badges such as pressing a total of 100 buttons. These badges aren't really that necessary, but I'm not complaining. Give me all the badges. I got a badge! Unfortunately, in this update, we also lost the title screen. This screen not only looked cool, but it allowed you to join friends, see the game's social media, and more. But Crazy Blocks for some reason thought it would be a great idea to get rid of it. We then got our first April Fool's maps, and they were just joke maps that were either really hard or impossible. One of the highlights from April was added permanently. It was yet again another crazy map named Decaying Silo. This map is kind of like a blue active volcanic mines, but it's not as difficult. However, I don't really like this map as much as active volcanic mines. It just gets kind of boring after a while, and it feels more like a routine rather than actually playing a map. This game was also celebrating 500 million visits around this time, so we got a new code. You want to guess what it was? That's right, it was called 500 million. Wow, so creative, Crazy Blocks. Also, why were the rewards for this code actually pretty good? Snowy Stronghold, one of May's highlights, continued to be highlighted during June. I guess people just liked it so much that Crazy Blocks decided to extend the time it was in the game. But I guess people liked it so much because then it was permanently added in July, which I'm not complaining about that. This map is extremely fun and it's just a blast to play. It's one of my favorite maps in the game, but for some reason no one votes for it anymore. Along with this, we got a new system called the Star System. Basically, it just adds an additional difficulty rating to every map. For example, if you had a normal map that was easier than most normal maps, the map star rating might be something like 2.1 or 2.2. However, if you had a normal map that was harder than most normal maps, it could have a rating of 2.8 or 2.9. The system is overall really useful for getting more specific and accurate difficulty ratings. We then got donations and map tests, so you could donate Robux to the people who made a map. This was also around the time that the game was celebrating its 6th birthday. So what did Crazy Blocks do to celebrate? He added back every single map that was highlighted up until that point. That's right, September didn't get any new highlights because all the old ones were temporarily brought back. Most of them stayed exactly the same since they were originally added, but there's one map that I want to specifically talk about, and that's Desert Ruins. While the creator was gone, the creator did a huge revamp for it, and it managed to make it harder than active volcanic mines. So, was it listed as a Crazy Plus map? Yes! Well, no. You see, this map was listed as a Crazy Plus in map test, so yes, this map is a Crazy Plus. Except it isn't, because the main game listed it as being a 5.9, the peak of the crazy difficulty. So this map is listed as crazy, except it isn't, because active volcanic mines was also 5.9, and Desert Ruins is said to be much more difficult. Either way, the game listed it as a crazy map, boo-hoo. But that doesn't really matter. What does matter is that this anniversary update was so fun. It wasn't as fun as watching Amy's Baking Company, but I loved going back and playing all the highlights, as well as getting to try out the ones I didn't get to play. Unfortunately, these maps were taken away in October, so we never got to see them in the main game ever again. After the anniversary fiasco, we just went back to getting a few new maps every month, and that's all for 2023. Overall, the game actually performed better than last year, and we're starting to see the return of the 1,000 or so active players. Now, let's move on to 2024. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that 2024 was not exactly a good year for this game. I think people started to realize that this game was dying, and we started to see the decline of players around this time. However, I'm still gonna list a few major things that happened in this year. I'm not gonna be going in any particular order, so that means I can talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the Here to Stay update. If you're confused about what that means, I was also confused when I saw the title for this video. Let's watch it and see what it's about. Oh my gosh. The first frame of the video shows that this map is called Mars Stations with an S. I always thought it didn't have an S at the end. We were clearly tricked. Oh, and also every map that was ever highlighted is becoming permanent. Cool. Wait, what? 70 new maps is kinda overboard. And before you knew it, this update rolled out. Now, when this update came out, I was totally expecting this to bring in a lot more players. Let's check the graph and see. What? Why are there barely any new players? Does anyone care about this game anymore? I mean, it did go up, but only for like 3 days. Now, you might be wondering what this massive spike is for. Like, was this game bought for more players and more attention? The answer is no, because during July of 2024, the Roblox Innovation Awards took place. And look at the games that were nominated for the best obby. No offense to these games, but Floodscape 2 is easily the best game that was nominated in this category. Let's just sit back and relax and see how this game wins with no competition. What? Why does Tower of Hell and even worse, Obby But You're on a Bike have more votes than Flood 2. I mean, Tower of Hell is nowhere near as creative as Flood 2, and Obby But You're on a Bike is just a cash grab for all the 9-year-olds. Look at all these game passes! The reason is obviously because these two are more popular than Flood 2. So while this event did give us a spike in players, we didn't win, and we went right back down to our old crappy player count. The last thing I want to talk about is this new map called Rustic Jungle. It was the first ever Crazy Plus map that was added to the official game. This would mean that every single month we would get a new Crazy Plus highlight, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, after a lot of waiting, we finally have Crazy Plus in the official game. And that's essentially everything major for this year, other than the glaring fact that this game is currently crashing and it's about to burn hard. Alright, we're officially over halfway through the video. Now here's the main question. Why is the game dying? I mean, there's gotta be a reason, right? Well, I personally think that there's 3 reasons. 3 reasons why the game has been dying like crazy and why the player count is still decreasing to this day. However, I just want to go ahead and say that these reasons aren't concrete or fully accurate. These are just guesses that are attached to some evidence, but don't take anything that I'm about to say as fact. However, these 3 reasons might take a little bit to explain, but you've already watched this far, so there's no going back now. But just one more final disclaimer before we get into it. From here until the end of the video, I'm mostly going to be talking about things that you should not take as fact. I could totally be wrong for what I'm about to say in the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, but I wouldn't be surprised if anything here turned out to be true. But yeah, just keep the fact that these are educated guesses in the back of your mind, because I don't want anyone to get upset with me or this video. Without further ado, let's get into the first reason on why I think this game is dying. The first main reason I think the game is dying is because of how boring and repetitive the game gets. Now I know that I've played this game for many years, but ever since the newer maps have been released, the game has just started to become less fun. The highlights get boring just days after release, and is it weird to say that I think that there's too many maps? Like, that's probably just me, but I feel like we're getting too many maps in too short of a time frame, even after the highlight system was changed to once every 2 months. I wish we went back to getting less maps that were higher quality and more unique than more maps that all feel similar and are just not as good. Don't get me wrong, we do get some really creative and innovative maps every so often, but then everyone else uses those same features and it just becomes something that's not as unique. The maps aren't bad, don't get me wrong, but I kind of wish Crazy Blocks would focus on quality rather than quantity. Over the past year or two, we have literally doubled the amount of maps that we used to have, and most of my favorites are before the highlight system was introduced. Obviously, everyone has their own preferences for different maps, but do you see my point? And because the game started to become boring for me around the time where maps started to feel the same, I'm just convinced that the recent highlight system has just introduced so many new maps that are, and no offense, kind of boring. And another thing I want to mention is that the game has reached 1,000 active players only a few times since the Innovation Awards. In fact, the average number of active players is slowly but surely decreasing. And if you look at the active players before the highlight system, you can see that it's actually higher. I know the graph doesn't really look like it's decreasing, but when I hover my cursor over it, you can see that the numbers are nowhere near as high as they were just a year ago. And it's pretty sad that this game went from something that so many people play to a game that people don't really enjoy that much. And if this graph is truly accurate, then I don't know how much longer this game is going to be around before literally everyone stops playing it. When people start to realize the game is dying, that causes a chain reaction where more and more people stop playing it until the game unfortunately becomes forgotten. However, I'm pretty sure Crazy Blocks has realized that his game is dying, and it's kind of clear that he's been trying to get it back to relevance. Okay, that whole paragraph literally had nothing to do about the first reason. Sorry about that random tangent, but now let's move on to the next reason. The second reason on why I think the game is dying is surprisingly Crazy Plus. That's right, the same difficulty that everyone was so excited for was one of the main causes of the game crashing. But how does this single difficulty change the course of Floodscape 2? If anything, the player count should have been boosted as a result of this addition. Well, here's what I and many other people think the reason is. You see, any map that was in the crazy difficulty was really hard, and it's not like you could just beat them the first try. No, you'd have to practice a little bit and then you can go on your way and try to beat it. And as much of a pain as that sounds, it's really not that bad. In fact, I think it's pretty fun to learn difficult maps so that you can master them. Now let's move on to the Crazy Plus difficulty. Even though this is just one difficulty above the aforementioned Crazy, the maps that are considered Crazy Plus are so much harder than any Crazy map. And instead of it taking maybe a day or two to master the map, it can take many more days, maybe even weeks. Now I don't really have a say in this because I've only been in one Crazy Plus map, and that was Rustic Jungle, the first Crazy Plus map that was added in the main game. And that map took me forever. Like, my friends literally made a meme about how long it took me. And even though I enjoy grinding out Crazy maps, Crazy Plus maps are nowhere near as fun to beat. And even after I beat Rustic Jungle for the first time, I never managed to beat it again, even after playing the game for a few more months. However, this is mainly coming from me. Some people might enjoy grinding these maps out, but there's just one problem that makes this fiasco even worse, and that's the fact that these maps are added in way too fast. A new Crazy Plus map every month was certainly a lot to take in, and the only real way you would be able to beat it and get consistent at it would be to play the game for hours. You may know the YouTuber Evan, who used to make Floodscape 2 videos. He spent hours upon hours grinding January's Crazy Plus called Abandoned Junkyard. It was a 6.7 star map and the first Crazy Plus highlight, and you can tell he didn't enjoy it because the first thing he said about it on his video where he reviewed the highlights for that month was, "Don't even get me started on Abandoned Junkyard. I have over 300 recordings of this prison of a map and hours upon hours on the grind. I can't even tell you the relief you feel when you beat the map, never to play it again." I simply cannot imagine him looking back on Abandoned Junkyard with fond memories. That whole paragraph single-handedly shows the whole issue with Crazy Plus. It's not fun. Crazy maps were fun to beat and you could get really consistent with them, but Crazy Plus maps take forever if you want to beat it one time, and even after doing that, you're still not going to be consistent with it. Every time you replay a Crazy Plus map you beat, it won't feel like how it does with Crazy maps where you can beat it 90% of the time. That is if you even do replay it, because after I beat Rustic Jungle, I never sought it out again. The only times I ever replayed it was when it got voted, and you guessed it, I was not consistent with the map even after I had already completed it. This video made by Chris Summer has a section of it that perfectly reflects the same issues about this difficulty, and I highly recommend you check it out if you want to hear more about them. But overall, Crazy Plus is definitely not the best difficulty we all thought it would be. I personally think that Crazy maps are still on top, and I'm not the only people who think that Crazy Plus maps are too much. I also decided to make this random graph that shows how much fun players are having depending on the difficulty of the map to hopefully help out the people who need a visual to understand this better. Now let's move on to the final reason. The final reason is arguably the most important reason to take away, and that's the fact that outside sources are the main reason for the game's temporary popularity. Now you might be thinking, what does that even mean? But it's really not as complicated as it sounds. You know how I mentioned that the game sometimes gets random spikes that only last for a few days? Well, almost all of these, especially as of recently, have been caused by outside sources. What this means is that whenever something that's related to Floodscape 2 gets popular from somewhere online or in another game, the game will experience a temporary surge. However, when the game does its own stuff like a new update, the same surge just isn't there. And this has actually happened a multitude of times. In fact, I have a few examples to tell you about right now. The first example is the Roblox Innovation Awards. As I previously mentioned, Floodscape 2 was nominated for the Best Obby category in the 2024 Roblox Innovation Awards. We were unfortunately beat out by more popular competitors, those being Obby But You're on a Bike and Tower of Hell. However, due to us simply being nominated for an event that was being plastered all over the Roblox app and website, we were experiencing thousands of active players, probably the most amount of players the game has ever seen. I thought this would be the saving grace. I thought this would change the game's life forever. However, 2 days, no joke, 2 days after the big spike, we shot right back down to our lovely declining player count. If that's not sad, then I don't know what is. Alright, you might not have remembered that, but don't worry, because here's a more recent example. Around Valentine's Day of 2025, we saw this spike due to the very popular Roblox game known as Forsaken collaborating with Floodscape 2. This update introduced Forsaken players to a skin that was only obtainable through playing and beating a Floodscape 2 map known as Classic Canyon. Classic Canyon is a normal map, so it's just hard enough to the point where people who've never played Floodscape 2 might struggle with it. And when I saw this, I thought I had to cancel this whole video. I mean, Floodscape 2 collaborating with one of the most popular Roblox games as of right now has to bring in all the new players. And it did! We managed to see the game go to over 1,000 active players. However, all good things eventually come to an end, and in this case, it took almost no time at all for this to end. After a few days, we already went down to our previous player count, as if everyone who played Forsaken and was interested got the skin and no longer cared anymore. Just in case you forgot that one as well, an even more recent example involves a video that got hundreds of thousands of views. It was made by this guy who has tens of thousands of subscribers, and the video basically shows people with skins in Forsaken that can't be obtained in the main game. And not only does this thumbnail show the skin for Floodscape 2, but one of the first skins this guy talks about is the same skin in the thumbnail. This caused another surge of players that's still kind of going on while I'm recording this video. However, I've been watching this graph like a hawk, and I'm starting to notice that it is starting to kind of die down. But all of these examples just goes to show that the game only gets new players from outside sources, and the surges that it does get from them never really last that long. This means that the game can't really do any major updates that will bring in new players. That's really only happened with the Here to Stay update, and that spike only lasted for like 1 day. And all of this leads me to my final takeaway from these 3 reasons. Floodscape 2 is in a position where nothing is good enough. No matter how many updates the game releases or how big the updates are, the game won't suddenly recover. Adding 70 new maps out of nowhere? Nope. Revamping the lobby to make it look more fresh? Not really. Adding a whole new difficulty that people were always hoping would be added to the main game? Yeah, maybe look away because the player count isn't exactly what you and I hope for. Once again, the only way the game gets new players is from the aforementioned outside sources. And as previously mentioned, the outside sources don't keep new players around forever. The most it'll last is for a few weeks. I know this sounds unnecessarily harsh, but it's kind of the unfortunate truth. I mean, it would take an absolute miracle for this game to go back to its old ways. Like the game would have to get on the news somehow. And even then, I'm still not sure about it. So yeah, those are my 3 reasons on why I think Floodscape 2 is dying. Now let's move on and talk about what the game has done in response. Now Now you probably already know that the game has been getting loads and loads of new maps as of recently, but that's all because of one update that we already talked about a while ago. What's that update, you ask? It's the Here to Stay update. But how does this update show any signs of desperation? I mean, it's a generous update, but maybe Crazy Blocks just wanted to let us have some more fun. However, I can easily see the main reason on why this update was even considered in the first place. You see, I don't think Crazy Blocks gave us this update just for our enjoyment. I think he gave us this update because not many people were playing the game at that time. In the video I made talking about this update, I included this funny little sketch that basically represents Crazy Blocks being desperate for players and updating the game to add all these new maps because he thought it would give the game tons of players.
Okay, Floodescape 2 is kind of dying right now, so let me just get out my backup plans. Okay, let's see. Are there any new backup plans? Add a new difficulty. No, I already did that with Crazy Blocks. Okay. Add a super hard map. No, I already did that with the Banshee Garden. We all know how that went out. Okay, oh, come on. Is there any new backup plan I haven't done yet? Add all highlights permanently? Only use if desperate. Expected players, 999 million. Circle to update. We're gonna get all of our highlights back, baby!
Now, even though it looks like I made this sketch just for comedy and it might be a little bit over-exaggerated, I feel like it's kind of true. Crazy Blocks probably did add all the maps to the game just for the sole purpose of getting more players, and to be honest, it only really worked for around a day. That's right, even with this big update, the game's player count increased for barely any time. And this also ties in with the third reason that I already mentioned. The game can't really do anything to get its players back. Once again, only outside sources have the ability to temporarily do that. Another subtle but noticeable example is the game's thumbnail, because it went from these simplistic and original thumbnails to this. As you can see, the new thumbnails have a lot more going on. The colors are much more vibrant, everything is more expressive, and so much more. Now, the thumbnail was probably just changed because it looks better and appeals to a broader audience, but I actually kind of prefer the older images. The older ones were a lot more simple, but they got the job done. They weren't 100% totally unique, but I like them for what they were. But this, I don't really know how I feel about it. It doesn't really feel like Floodescape 2, and it might have just been added to, once again, appeal to more players. But to be honest, it could be worse. I think that this is just a little touch-up that I'm personally not the biggest fan of, and I'm probably just overthinking everything at this point. Even though it's not as good as the original, at least it's not something like blatant AI. And yes, I am looking at you, Grow a Garden. Like, has anyone else noticed that the studs in this thumbnail are all deformed and misshapen? That's exactly a mistake that an AI image generator would make. Seriously, you could have at least tried to make it look real, but I guess AI image generation is the next big thing, and to be fair, a lot of other Roblox games are doing the exact same thing. I don't approve of it, but whatever, I can't really stop anyone. But let's look on the bright side. At least Crazy Blocks would never do such a thing like make an AI thumbnail. What the heck is that thing? Thankfully, this thumbnail was changed after a day, especially because it's proven to be AI generated. But why? I'm getting nightmares just by looking at it. Like, what was Crazy Blocks actually thinking when he updated this? Did he seriously go, yep, that looks perfect for our game. That's exactly what the buttons look like, and the flood is definitely hyper-realistic looking. Like, was he actually thinking about keeping this in and only changed it after people responded? Okay, sorry about that whole fiasco. But the Here to Stay update is definitely an example I feel like everyone knows. The thumbnail, on the other hand, that's just a random guess that's probably the result of me overthinking the whole thing. And the whole AI situation was probably just a joke. Now, once again, these were kind of just educated guesses, and you shouldn't take either of them as fact. How many times have I said that? Because who knows, there might be another completely different factor that's causing people to stop playing this game. Maybe Crazy Blocks did these things simply to just improve the overall experience. However, I do want to discuss something that's related to Floodescape 2. And no, I'm not talking about Floodescape Classic. I actually want to talk about a whole different game that was announced out of the blue that's called Floodescape Hybrid. Now, I understand that what I'm about to talk about is a game that's still being developed and we don't really know how it's going to turn out unless the developers give us more information. This is one of the few images we have of it, and it looks like it's going to be more geared towards Floodescape Classic. Now, don't get me wrong, this game looks pretty cool and I'm kind of excited for the day it comes out. And we actually know some stuff about what it'll be like. We got a teaser for some features such as sideways ladder climbing, a new lobby, new leaderboards, and even some maps that actually look insane. A popular Floodescape 2 YouTuber known as Boon Moon made a whole video about what we know about Floodescape Hybrid so far and some features that would be very cool to see. I highly recommend you watch that video if you want to learn a bit more about this game. But the main thing you need to know about this game is that it essentially combines features from Floodescape Classic and Floodescape 2 and puts it all into one game. That's probably why it's called Floodescape Hybrid and not something stupid like Floodescape 3. Because this isn't a sequel, it's more of a spin-off if you will. And if they do manage to pull this off, this would probably be one of my favorite obbies ever. To be fair, there's only like 5 obby games that I actually like, but that's besides the point. The main reason I'm excited is because I love Floodescape Classic. But the only issue is that it looks a little outdated, so a modern version of Floodescape Classic with features taken from Floodescape 2 and some more stuff on top of that is like a dream come true. However, I do have to address the elephant in the room and my only real concern about this game, and that's that I'm a little bit nervous that it's not going to perform to Crazy Blox's expectations. I know, you all saw this coming. Like, this game was announced in March of 2024 and it's apparently still being developed as of June 2025. Now, I obviously don't expect games to get finished in a couple of months after they were announced, but if it's still being developed and the main game isn't doing so hot, is Floodescape Hybrid going to perform well? I don't really have any examples of stuff like this happening for other games, but do you see my point? Like, if Floodescape 2 isn't doing as well as it was, what's going to convince me that this game, which is related to the even less popular Floodescape Classic, will do well? Now, I don't have a crystal ball that can magically predict the future, and Floodescape Hybrid might actually do really well, but as of right now, from everything I've seen about this game currently, I don't think this game will do as well as we were expecting. Once again, I feel like this is a little bit of a desperate move. The game really started dying a month or two into 2024, and this game was coincidentally announced around that same time. Now, I'm not sure if Crazy Blox is legitimately hoping this game will succeed, as it kind of looks more like a passion project that pays respect to the original Floodescape Classic. Like, here's the lobby from Floodescape Classic, and here's the lobby from Floodescape Hybrid. Can't you see the resemblance? But I still can't imagine that it'll do very well, considering that this game is basically dead right now. Don't get me wrong, this new game looks really fun, and the new mechanics look pretty interesting and could probably be used in many fun and unique ways. However, the game probably won't get thousands of players like Floodescape 2 did. If it does, then that's amazing, but that's almost certainly not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to be very temporary. However, once again, don't take what I'm saying as fact. The developers might not even care about the performance of this game, and they might just be making it because they think it's fun. I'm not directly saying that anyone's expecting it to do incredibly, I'm just saying that people will be disappointed in the performance of the game if they are expecting high numbers. So those are my thoughts about Floodescape Hybrid. I really wanted to be more positive about it, as it seems like it's going to be an absolute blast of a game, and I really want it to do well, but as of right now, I'm not confident that actually happening. Okay, I promise that the video is almost done, but there's just one more thing I want to talk about, and that's the potential fixes for Floodescape 2. But before we start with that section, I'm not a game developer in any way. The most I have programmed is a level in Geometry Dash, so my recommendations are probably not going to be 100% accurate, but I'm hoping they're pretty close. But without further ado, here are my recommendations for getting this game back on track. The first way that can help getting this game back to where it was is by re-adding a feature that I barely talked about while I was talking about the history of this game, and that is chill mode. As a refresher, this was a different game mode where the intensity was capped out at 3, which means no insane maps or above, and every time a hard map ended, the difficulty would go back down to easy. This made it a great way to get new players into the game without throwing them into maps that are way too challenging for their skill level. In fact, when you open the game for the first time, you would get a notification that highly recommended that you go to chill servers. Okay, so originally I was gonna show an image of the notification, but then I couldn't find an image of it, so I decided to make a replica. I know it doesn't look that great, but it gives you a decent idea of what the notification did look like. But during June of 2024, not only were chaos servers removed, which I really don't care about, but chill servers got the axe as well. And this sucks because new players might try the game and end up in a server with people who keep playing difficult maps that they can't get anywhere close to beating. I mean, if you're a new player and you played a super hard map for the first time, you probably wouldn't play for that long either. First impressions are everything. In fact, that's why I don't play some games that people ask me to play. I genuinely cannot blame the people who don't want to stay long after dying over and over again on maps that are way above their skill level. Like, imagine you're a random Roblox player who's looking for new games to play. You want something unique and enjoyable that's different from anything else. Suddenly, you come across this game known as Floodescape 2, and it sounds really interesting. Like, look at all the cool stuff that the description advertises. There's no way this will be disappointing. But after joining and entering the lift, you remember the map that is way too hard for your skill level. In response, you automatically think that the game is way too hard and you leave. And after that, you never think about it again. Do you see how bad that is? Roblox games just can't rely on their experienced players because if they leave, then who's going to replace them? New players are just as, if not even more important than anyone else that joins the game. You should present them with something easy because they're not familiar with any of the game's mechanics. For example, Eternal's Tower as a fellow used to have the same issue because new players would overestimate their skill level and go to the hardest tower only to realize that it's way too hard, which causes frustration. However, this was fixed by simply locking the later more difficult towers up until you beat an easy one. And look at this jump in players! So the solution for Floodescape 2 is to obviously just get the chill servers back and get that same notification when new players join for the first time. You can even add an extra "Are you sure?" confirmation so the player has to think twice before closing it. And if they get stuck with really hard levels, they can go, you know what, this is too challenging for me, but I'm gonna go over to that other game mode that I got a notification for. But seriously, why did Crazy Blox remove chill servers? It's one of the most confusing things that he's ever done, and it sucks that the only people who play this game are people who aren't new to it. So eventually the experienced players will quit, and then nobody will be around to play anymore. I'm not even kidding when I say that adding something you thought would be unnecessary would probably boost the number of players. What's interesting is that along with chaos servers, this place is still listed as an integral part of Floodescape 2 on this website. When you click on the link, you're sent to this, so Crazy Blox Roblox probably made it private, but if you ever want to bring it back, it's literally right there. I also want to go back to these badges because they actually show a percentage that shows the percent of players who managed to obtain the badge. So with a calculator and a lot of mistakes, I figured out a rough estimate of the percent of players who have beaten at least one map. Now, what do you think the percent will come out to be? Maybe 65, 50? 40? Well, it actually comes down to 18.5%. That's right, 18.5% of all players who've ever joined the game have beaten the map. That's not a whole lot of people. Keep in mind that this is just a very rough estimate, but the fact that only 18.5% of people who have ever stepped foot into the game have beaten a map is pretty crazy. This means that if 1,000 new players joined this game for the first time, that means that only 185 people would have walked away successfully completing a map. But that number could be higher if we brought back the chill servers and let new players actually get a feel for the game rather than throwing them into dark side facility and telling them, good luck, have fun. To be fair, CrazyBlocks has introduced an intensity reset system where the intensity goes straight back to 1 after a while, and he also kept the intensity for normal servers at 4. But, I mean, why? I don't think any experienced players like these changes, and they didn't have to be here in the first place if you simply added the chill servers back to the game. Seriously, how hard is it to do that? It's literally right there! It's just a game, it's just a game. So yeah, that's the first way to get this game back on track. But seriously, it's not hard to get chill servers back. Please give them back to us, CrazyBlocks. The second way to fix this game is to focus on quality over quantity. We're getting 6 new maps every 2 months, and that equates to 36 new maps every year. However, some of these maps are definitely not as good as others. In fact, I feel like most of the maps that get highlighted don't feel too unique or different than any other maps. That's not me saying that they are bad or enjoyable. I just find that most of the maps have similarities that are pretty noticeable. However, we usually get one incredible and unique standout map every so often that's totally different from everything else. And I wish we would just get that one map every 2 months rather than 6 maps that might just be all okay. Now, if you like having all these maps every 2 months, that's totally fine. But for me, I like having fewer maps that are excellent rather than having many similar maps that are decent. That's not to say that the highlights are bad. In fact, I don't think we've ever gotten a single bad highlight. Asterisk. But if we didn't get all these new maps that are good but not great, and instead get one amazing map every 2 months, that could make the game feel a bit more fresh. The final way to revive this game is by fixing up Crazy Plus. I feel like we're getting too many Crazy Plus maps even after the highlight system was reworked, and they can be a real pain to grind out. As much as I would love to see this difficulty straight up get deleted, that seems very impractical, and everyone would be absolutely devastated and angered. So I think the best solution is to go somewhere in the middle and simply reduce the amount of Crazy Plus maps that we get. I would say that getting one once every 4 or even 6 months would be a nice improvement. It gives people enough time to focus on the other maps without stressing out and beating the new Crazy Plus maps, and I personally think that's a no-brainer. Now, people would probably be upset about this change, but I think it's the most practical decision to avoid any unnecessary stress and oversaturation. Maybe another change could be forcing new players to go to chill service, but that seems a bit harsh. Maybe if the new players say no to the notification, 2 more could pop up that are like, are you sure? I also think that normal servers should have crazy maps in them. That way, when people transition to pro servers for the first time, they only need to worry about Crazy Plus and not Crazy. So those are some ways to get this game back together. I feel like if we follow through with them, then this game might actually have a fighting chance. One last thing I wanted to talk about is CrazyBlocks' new decision to get a proper dev team. As far as I'm concerned, it's going pretty well so far. The player count is still around the same that it was before the dev team got introduced, but they could definitely make some great changes to the game that could make it succeed again. And who knows, maybe someone from the dev team is watching this right now and they might even implant some of the changes that I recommended. So even though I've been talking about how this game is dead and that there's almost no hope, this dev team is the closest thing we're going to get to this game coming back. However, even with that, I'm still unsure. But who knows, maybe I'm just being too pessimistic. Yeah, this is my third Baja Blast of the video. I mean, can you even blame me? They're just so delicious. Alright, let's go through some quick final thoughts I'm just going to rapid fire through. This section will include some questions or some additional information that I think should be mentioned. First of all, you might be saying, did the game actually die? I mean, 700 to 800 players is still pretty good. Well, in 2018, every snapshot of the game's player count on Internet Archive consistently reached well over 2,000. In fact, on August 26, 2018, the game reached over 5,000 players. So if we get an average of around 3.5 thousand players, that means that this game has lost around 70 to 80% of its player base. That's a pretty substantial drop off, and I think it solidifies my overall point that I've strengthened throughout this whole video. My next question is a bit of a trickier one, and it's, when did the game truly start to die down? I think this is a pretty debatable question that brings in a lot of different answers. Some people might say 2019 when there were almost no updates, and some people might say 2024, just last year. I personally don't think that there's a definitive time where the game actually lost traction, rather I think it slowly got worse over time. For example, 2021 had a decrease in players at one point, but 2023 usually had around 1 to 1.5 thousand active players on average, an even better year than 2022. I personally say around 2021 is when things started to get rusty, and late 2023 and 2024 is kind of when it became much more evident in my opinion. However, this is still a very subjective question, and if you used to play this game, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, if all my changes that I previously mentioned were put into action, does this game have a fighting chance? And personally, I think the answer is no. Even if all my changes and more were introduced, I feel like there's not much hope for the future of this game. I know it's unfortunate, but it's kind of just the sad truth. While I do think some of my changes would be for the better in terms of overall player experience, I don't know if they would affect performance. It kind of just feels like we're at the point of no return, and we might eventually see even lower player counts like 300 in a year or two. I don't know that for sure, but it definitely does seem like a possibility that's pretty scary to think about. I really do love Floodescape 2, but if we're thinking long term, I don't have high hopes. Especially with Floodescape Hybrid coming out soon, I wonder if the game will start to slow down with its updates and eventually become an afterthought like Floodescape Classic. Floodescape 2 had its players, it had its success, but now I think it's safe to say that we're at a point where it's all coming to a close. And that's why I think Floodescape 2 is dying. However, there's just one more thing I want to say, and I'll try to keep it short because this video is already long enough as it is. But I've played Floodescape 2 for years and years, and it really does suck that it's at its worst point that's ever been at, and the player count is slowly but surely dropping. I remember when I played this game for the first time back in 2018, and it was simply a few thousand people playing the game at once just because it was fun. There was rarely any drama, besides Autumn Hideaway. We got new maps that were good every so often, and it felt like the game was more of a hangout spot, if that makes sense to you. I really don't expect any of my recommendations to go into action, and even if they do, the game is already in a pretty bad predicament, and I think it might already be too late to save this game. And that kind of sucks to say, because, once again, I've played this game for literal years, and it's starting to feel pointless asking for people to do something about the fact that it's dying. I just want to see this game succeed like it did a few years ago, because it truly does deserve the absolute best. The truth of the matter is that we live in a day and age of Roblox where soulless cash grabs dominate the charts. Games that only exist to make as much money as possible and nothing else. I'm talking about Pet Simulator 99, Steal a Brain Rot, Garden Tower Defense, Steal a Deadly Rails. You know, I can't help but feel like these games are all connected in some way. And that really sucks because most of these games don't feel like they have any love put into them by their developers. Don't get me wrong, there are some games towards the top that do have a lot of passion. The first game that comes to mind to me is Doors. After I played a couple of rounds of that game, I decided, you know what, this game is not for me. However, even though I might not enjoy it as much as others, I can see how much love was poured into it. The same thing applies to other games like Pressure and Forsaken. I don't necessarily enjoy those games, but I can definitely tell that a lot of passion and hard work was put into them. When I play Floodescape 2, I can feel the amount of passion and care that was poured into every little detail and mechanic. This game definitely deserves to be towards the top of the most popular games, but once again, it's probably too late to do anything about it. So, 39 pages and over 16,000 words later, I can now safely come to a final conclusion. We'll either get very lucky and have the game revived by taking a plan into action very soon, or the game will slowly but surely lose its players and it won't get to see the light of day ever again. And if this game does fully die out, I guess we're gonna have to switch over to Catch That Man! Yeah, did you really think I forgot about this? This game is truly one of a kind, and it deserves a lot more praise. Forget about all of that Floodescape 2 stuff. This whole hour-long video was made just for this moment. If you watched this far into the video, seriously, thank you so much. I started writing this script back in November of last year, and even though this took a while to make, it was actually pretty fun, and as of the time I'm writing this, I can't wait to see the final product posted on YouTube. But also, if you watch this whole thing, you might, no, you need help. Anyways, thanks for watching this very short video, and I'll see you all later.